Hello, lovely! You know, in this gaming day of age, there just aren't enough fancy MMOs to be taken seriously, said no man ever. In this age of elitist, high-tech PC gaming, there are so many Tolkien-style fantasy games to choose from. From the Guild Wars 2, the gentle giant that it is, to the oh-so-popular money vacuum that is World of Warcraft. Yet more MMOs, that's massively multiplayer online, are becoming free-to-play and thus more popular to people like me and other tiresome members of the public. And that's where games like Dragon's Prophet comes into things.
Oh, wait, it's downloadable. That means I just have to press the button.
With a name like Dragon's Prophet, I can tell exactly what sort of game I'm getting into. On the surface, you have your monotonous fantasy RPG, developed by Runewaker Entertainment, where everything's meant to be played out serious, with all this medieval magic shit going on, and there's monsters littered around the world, where they're all the sizes of buses, and by all logical pretenses, would have wiped out human civilization before it had time to evolve. Nonetheless, humans managed to survive in this world of the beasts by the help of their little dragon friends that they ride around like ickle horsey-warsies round the world of Pixelland. Ooh! The story, or rather the setup to what will be your role-playing endeavours, if you can even manage to call it that, is that there has been a conspicuous prophecy that this big bad dragon will return and fuck up the world somehow and wipe out humanity.
And with it, Oration be engulfed in death and destruction.
See? But, luckily you, and a shit ton of others, are there to stop him as the Dragonborn of Skyrim. I'm the Dragon Riders of Skyhammer, a Dovahkiin, a Warriorkin that act as a sort of medieval CIA. Of course, like any other MMO or RPG, you get to design your own character to vicariously live out a more desirable existence. As per usual in a game like this, you have your choice between 4 typical classes. There's your standard new role-player's warrior class that logs around a broadsword that's twice their size, a skinny archer for ranged attacks and kicking beavers into the air, your mage warriors who sort of like magic but also pressing mouse buttons a lot, and finally your standard mages that erotically grasp the shaft whilst gently using their magic fingers to toss glowing balls across the meadow. But the customization does not stop there. You also have bare minimum control over what you can look like, being your facial features and a few haircuts. Especially for an MMO where you want your avatar to look as unique as possible, there's hardly any customization available. Bar a number of faces varying in fuck ugliness, we have no control over how sexy our beards will look, which to someone like me is utterly disappointing. Especially because all of the facial features look as plastic as a Sims game, and the hair just looks like it's some groomed wax. Apart from that, we actually have a nice level of detail to control over our upper body's muscles and proportions. So basically we can choose between a beefcake and a twink or some weird mix in between. What's really strange and kind of out of place here is that whenever you zoom in and out on the character creation menu, it always seems to be focused in on the character's crotch, which just weird. Either this is meant to be some form of social commentary suggesting how people are always focused towards their natural drive to reproduce, or that the developers are just lazy.
Either way, just check out that package.
Actually, I'm less inclined to think that the developers of the character design were lazy and definitely nowhere near pretentious enough to be social commentators, and are plain and simple perverts. Why do I make such a claim? Well, let's go and take a look at the female character design menus and see how shallow this thing really gets.
Oh look, you not only get to control boob size, but cleavage too. Gather around, girls, and become ashamed of your natural image. And 14-year-old boys playing with these settings, gather around jerking yourselves to death as you lose your rationale of realistic proportions and women, and chase a simple wank fantasy, objectifying yourselves and each other.
My point being that there's a big difference between artistic erotica being used for romantic and emotional effects, and then there's just plain smut.
Which in this case is plainly misogynistic. If you want me to treat you like a respectable human being, how about you give me the exact same amount of control for guys?
Once all of that exposition bullshit is out the way, you get thrusted into a cutscene which is actually so poorly animated it's laughable, and dialogue that sounds like it was just
ripped out of a dubbed Kung Fu fantasy.
That was too close. Surprised you didn't see that one coming. You're in bad shape, but that's no excuse for no siren.
This scene basically explains that, just like Conan the Barbarian, your generic fishing village is under attack, and it is imperative that you save this one little fishing village, or else...
If it gets to the village, all is lost!
See? Once you tire of exploiting the grinding, you are now set forth into your generic MMO world. Graphically speaking, as well as genre-wise, there's not really much to speak of. It just looks the same as any other fantasy MMO. There are only a handful of settings to fiddle with. Not that it will stop the animations from happening, or even give any object definable texture quality. Of course, this being a free-to-play open beta MMO, I can't really give it much criticisms in that area, seeing as everything's going to be stored on a server. But what really irks me here is the art style, or to be exact, the complete lack of it. Visually speaking, it's generic as fuck. It just looks the same as any other Lord of the Rings style fantasy, where everything's tall trees and everything's typical fantasy creatures like trolls and saber-toothed lions and giant fuck-off chickens. It doesn't help either that any of the man-made constructions within the game look in no way unique. They're just destroyed Romanesque towns and castles with some Celtic-style magic floating about in certain locations. There's nothing really unique in this world, and it hardly feels dynamic at all. What I, and many other people, are doing doesn't seem to have any gravitas to it either, especially when monsters constantly spawn in front of you. This could also be linked with one of the issues that I have with some MMOs, that everyone seems to have the same quests, and that just makes it seem like the game has no dynamics whatsoever. For example, I'm off doing some really manly questing, such as looting cats out of trees for a level 1 small girl who somehow finds 200 or so gold to pay me just for collecting for cat things. No real problems there, apart from the fact that there's a girl who's paying a ridiculous sum of money for such a menial task. Once someone else comes along with the exact same quest, the cats just instantly respawn right in front of me, making all of what I did feel completely pointless. This girl can't even hold on to her pets before she's even given them. Not only that, but she's dishing out an infinite amount of coins from the fucking ether. The world has no real depth to it, so the whole plot about mankind being wiped out has no weight to it at all. If you're going to have a storyline in an MMO, then you might as well make it one that allows teamwork to be involved and actual guild work, making people work together instead of this sort of single-player experience that also involves other people sometimes when they're harmlessly wandering around doing similar things. The gameplay itself isn't really anything unique either. It's all just the standard 4 classes, so there's nothing new on offer. It's mostly about stringing together combos in order to perform more efficient damage, switching between magic and brute force, and really that's all the depth to the combat that you're gonna get.
Oh yeah, and if that wasn't bad enough, all you're gonna hear whilst playing is this.
A lot of what you'll do, at least as a guardian or oracle, is run up to an enemy and mash the mouse button like a complete psychopath. And then maybe you'll run away when you're low on health. Of course you'll have such trouble even doing that because the hit detection is such bullshit that an enemy doesn't even have to touch you to cause damage and kill you. And they always seem to be able to clip around the place if you manage to jump up on a ledge. So the only real way to outrun something like a stampeding dragon is to jump into a lake, because only humans have swimming sort of programmed in. I say sort of because the swimming dynamics aren't exactly the same as running, because whilst you're treading water you can somehow jump 8 feet into the air, or even just jump up a fucking waterfall and then run out of the map. Then again, this is a beta and maybe these things aren't finished yet. So with everything else being comically buggy or generically boring, what exactly is the unique selling point of Dragon's Prophet, apart from it being a free-to-play fantasy? Well, firstly, is that you could now ride vehicles around the map to get around faster, or even fight in them in the form of a tamed dragon. This is the sort of Pokemon approach to a video game, where players' objectives are to capture and tame as many dragons as possible, and train them up with the unique set of skills. This is actually one of the good things I can say about Dragon's Prophet, is that there's actually a large number of tameable beasts roaming around for you to capture and ride around on, all with their own unique abilities. Some can fly and breathe fire, others just plod around like hippos, managing to tank damage and deal a lot in turn. However, the way that you tame dragons is rather repetitive. You just seem to jump on their back and perform a glorified QuickTime event, where if the stars are right and you've got the right level of charm to, well, charm their dragons and hold on long enough, then you manage to have yourself a friendly new pet psychic for your shit adventures. The other unique selling point of Dragon's Prophet is its guild support, guilds basically being chat channels. It claims to be a lot easier to interact with people. I mean, after all, this is an MMO, it's meant to be a social gaming experience, and well, it does manage to achieve that. The interface is easy enough to navigate, and there are plenty of guilds openly advertising themselves for anyone to join for a social chit-chat. Outside of that though, the servers seem to run rather empty, with only a few players dotted around, confusingly asking for help at rare occasions. But this is because the game is so underpopulated that it's rare to find someone who speaks enough English to have a full social conversation, if you are in English. Otherwise, you're going to have to go off to the far distant mystical lands of Google Translate. Nonetheless, the crowd playing this game aren't complete sociopathic, psychotic, competitive gamers, which means the whole experience is actually quite bearable and, some might say, enjoyable. However, it's sad to say that there's not really any extreme role players who are really getting into the sort of Dungeons and Dragons spirit of fully role-playing, speaking in ye olde quest dialogue to you. I suppose one of the main draws to a game like this is that it's open for everyone, as in it's free to play. So with such a feature, you'd expect something like microtransactions to be predominant in order to help fuel the developers and keep the servers running. And yeah, they're here. The way that these are used in Dragon's Prophet isn't so much an in-your-face manner. The only times that you'll see them is when you instantly want to get up after dying, but it's still basically there to give you a boon and help you level up quicker. You get to unlock new abilities faster and armours faster, without having to get repetitive strain injury from all that grinding that you'll have to do otherwise. Really, despite Dragon's Prophet basically being a gentle Labrador, it's still just too bland of an MMO to really attract a unique audience. I can see smug bellends like myself maybe having some marginal interest in it, enjoying the piss-poor writing and the cutscenes and the voice acting and all the comical relief that exists along with all the bugs. But once this goes full gold and is no longer a beta, those sort of things will probably disappear and will no longer have any interest in it. Something like this I'd find more enjoyable if it really went over the top, like the developers were sitting next to you just gently nudging you, laughing along as all the over the top ridiculous shit happened. However, for others just looking for a free to play alternative to Guild Wars 2, then this will probably suffice you for about 1 or 2 years until something much better comes out. That's all for this time. Go away.